Kai Moreau adjusted his uniform nervously as the airlock cycled open, revealing the cavernous interior of the Draxery flagship Thunderstrike. The corridors stretched endlessly upward, built for beings twice his height. Everything was oversized, the doorways, the control panels, even the ambient lighting seemed designed to cast imposing shadows. "Technician Moreau," rumbled a voice behind him. He turned to see a junior Draxery officer, still towering at 9 feet, gesturing toward a massive door. "Commander Velraka awaits." Kai's briefings had prepared him for this moment. Velraka, the Crimson Fury, they called her. 1,000 victories, entire star systems brought to heel under her command. The human diplomats had warned him to expect cold efficiency, perhaps even contempt for his species' perceived weakness. The door hissed open, and Kai stepped into what could only be described as a war room. Battle plans covered every surface, holographic displays showed fleet movements, and weapons lined the walls like trophies. At the center of it all stood his new commander. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. 12 feet of lean muscle wrapped in pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the harsh lights. Her pink hair fell in wild curls around her angular face, softening features that might otherwise seem too sharp. She wore battle armor that had clearly seen countless conflicts, scarred and dented but meticulously maintained. What caught Kai off guard wasn't her size or her fearsome reputation, it was the way she stood when she noticed him. Her massive frame seemed to fold in on itself, shoulders hunching as if trying to make herself smaller. Her golden eyes, which should have been fierce and commanding, darted to his face for barely a second before fixing on the floor. "You are, the human," she said, her voice a low rumble that vibrated through the deck plating. The words came out stilted, uncertain. "Kai Moreau, ma'am. Reporting for duty as your cultural liaison and technical assistant." He kept his voice steady, professional, even as his heart raced. She nodded once, sharply, then seemed to realize she was still staring at her feet. When she looked up again, there was something almost vulnerable in her expression. "I am Commander Velraka. We will work together." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Kai had expected many things from this first meeting, but her obvious discomfort hadn't been one of them. This fearsome warrior seemed more nervous than he was. "I look forward to learning from you, Commander," he said gently. Something shifted in her expression, surprise, perhaps relief. For just a moment, her shoulders relaxed, and Kai caught a glimpse of the woman beneath the warrior's mask. 3 weeks into their assignment, Kai had learned to read the subtle signs of Velraka's moods. The way her pink curls would fall across her face when she was deep in thought, how her massive hands would clench and unclench when she was frustrated, and most tellingly, how she still couldn't quite meet his eyes when they spoke. "The quantum flux readings are inconsistent," she said, her voice carefully controlled as they reviewed technical reports together. Her chair had been specially modified to accommodate her towering frame, but she still seemed to make herself smaller whenever he approached. "May I?" Kai gestured toward the display. She nodded, and he stepped closer, close enough to catch the faint scent of something floral, surprising for a warrior. "I think I see the issue. The calibration parameters are set for Draxery physiology, but the human components need different settings." As he worked, he noticed her watching him with an intensity that made his skin tingle. When he glanced up, she quickly looked away, a pale blue flush coloring her cheeks. "You're not what I expected," she said quietly. "What did you expect?" "Fear. Submission. Your people are." She paused, searching for words, "small. Fragile. Most beings cower when they see me." Kai straightened, studying her face. "Do you want me to be afraid of you?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. Her golden eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked almost lost. No. I don't think I do." "Good, because I'm not." He smiled, and something wonderful happened, she smiled back. It was small, tentative, but it transformed her entire face. From that day forward, their interactions became easier. Kai began bringing her human tea during their work sessions, watching with amusement as she delicately held the tiny cup in her massive hands. He told her jokes that made her laugh, a sound like distant thunder that he found himself craving. "Why do you do this?" she asked one evening as they worked late in her quarters. The formal war room had given way to a more private space, still oversized but somehow warmer. "Do what?" "Treat me like." She struggled with the words, "like I'm not a monster." Kai set down his data pad and looked at her directly. "Because you're not. You're a person, Velraka. A person who happens to be very tall and very strong, but still a person." Her breath caught, and for a moment, he thought she might cry. Instead, she reached out with one massive hand, stopping just short of touching his face. "No one has ever said that to me before," she whispered. The breakthrough came during a diplomatic dinner with representatives from 3 systems. Kai watched from the sidelines as Velraka commanded the room, her presence filling the space with quiet authority. She negotiated trade agreements and territorial disputes with surgical precision, never raising her voice but somehow making every word carry weight. Afterward, as they walked back to her quarters, she seemed to deflate. "You were incredible in there," Kai said. "I've never seen anyone command respect like that." "Respect born of fear," she replied, her voice hollow. "They listen because they know I could crush them, not because they value my words." "That's not what I saw. I saw someone who understood the complexities of interstellar politics better than anyone in that room. Someone who found solutions that benefited everyone." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "You see things differently than others. Maybe. Or maybe I just see you differently." They had reached her quarters, but neither moved to enter. The corridor was dimly lit, casting long shadows that made the moment feel intimate and private. "On my world," she said softly, "strength is everything. We're bred for war, trained from birth to conquer and dominate. Emotions are weakness. Gentleness is failure." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I've never been allowed to be soft." "What do you want to be?" The question hung in the air between them. Velraka's golden eyes searched his face, and he could see the war being fought behind them, years of conditioning battling against something deeper, more fundamental. "I want to be someone who doesn't have to be feared to be respected," she said finally. "Someone who can laugh without it being seen as weakness. Someone who can." She paused, her cheeks flushing that pale blue again, someone who can care about another person without it being called softness. Kai stepped closer, close enough that he had to crane his neck to look up at her. "You already are that person. You just need to let yourself believe it." She knelt then, bringing herself closer to his eye level, her massive form somehow graceful despite her size. "When I'm with you," she whispered, "I feel like I can be someone else. Someone better." "You don't need to be someone else," he said, reaching out to touch her face. Her skin was warm, softer than he'd expected. "You just need to be yourself." She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing as if savoring the contact. "I don't remember the last time someone touched me gently," she admitted. "Then let me remind you how it feels." The crisis came from an unexpected source. Commander Thrakvor, Velraka's second-in-command, had been watching their growing closeness with increasing disapproval. During a staff meeting, his criticism came to a head. "The human has made you weak," he growled, his own imposing frame radiating hostility. "You spend more time in his company than planning our next conquest. The crew whispers that you've forgotten what it means to be Draxari." Velraka's posture stiffened, and Kai saw the warrior mask sliding back into place. "My effectiveness has not diminished," she said coldly. "Hasn't it? When was the last time you led from the front? When did you last show true strength?" Thrakvor's eyes gleamed with challenge. "Perhaps it's time for new leadership." The room fell silent. Among the Draxari, such words were tantamount to a challenge for command. Kai saw Velraka's hands clench, saw the old conditioning reasserting itself. Commander, Kai said quietly, stepping forward despite the dangerous tension in the room. With respect, I think you're wrong. Every eye in the room turned to him. Thrakvor's expression was one of contempt mixed with surprise that the small human would dare speak. Velraka is the strongest person I've ever met, Kai continued, his voice steady despite the fear racing through him. Not because she can destroy her enemies, but because she can choose not to. Not because she's feared, but because she's earned respect through wisdom and compassion. If that's weakness, then I'll take weakness over your kind of strength any day. The silence stretched taut. Thrakvor took a step toward Kai, murder in his eyes, but Velraka rose to her full height, placing herself between them. Enough, she said, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had never needed to prove their strength. Thrakvor, you forget yourself. Dismissed. The meeting broke up in uncomfortable silence, but Kai barely noticed. He was focused on Velraka's face, on the way she was looking at him with an expression he'd never seen before, wonder, gratitude, and something deeper. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, she came to him. No one has ever defended me before, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Not since I was a child. I couldn't let him talk about you like that. Why? She asked, stepping closer. Why do you care so much? Kai looked up at her, this magnificent, impossible woman who had somehow become the center of his world. Because I love you, he said simply. I love your strength and your gentleness, your fierce intelligence and your shy smile. I love how you make me feel like I can be brave. She knelt before him, bringing their faces level. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't know I could feel this way about anyone. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, her massive hands cradling his face as if he were made of glass. But as passion ignited between them, her touch became more confident, more sure. She lifted him easily, carrying him to her bed, and there in the soft light of her quarters, they made love with a tenderness that surprised them both. Afterward, as they lay entwined despite their size difference, Velraka traced patterns on his chest with one finger. I was wrong, she murmured against his hair. This isn't weakness. This is the strongest thing I've ever felt. 6 months later, the Thunderstrike played host to a historic gathering, representatives from dozens of worlds, all come to witness the signing of the Galactic Harmony Accords. But the real story, whispered in corridors and transmitted across space, was the unlikely couple at the center of it all. Kai stood beside Velraka as she addressed the assembly, her words carrying across the vast chamber with quiet authority. She spoke of strength through unity, of the power that came from understanding rather than domination. The delegates listened with rapt attention, drawn not by fear but by the wisdom in her words. The old ways taught us that might makes right, she said, her golden eyes finding Kai's in the crowd. But we have learned that true strength comes from choosing when to fight and when to show mercy. From building bridges instead of walls. From love instead of fear. The accords were signed to thunderous applause, but Kai only had eyes for Velraka. She had found her balance, the warrior and the woman, the commander and the lover, all existing in perfect harmony. That night, as they walked through the ship's gardens, a new addition that reflected her softer side, she took his hand in hers. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Falling in love with someone so different from yourself? Kai looked up at her, this incredible woman who had taught him that love truly knew no boundaries. Every day, he said with a straight face. Her expression faltered for just a moment before she caught his teasing tone. You're impossible, she laughed, that wonderful sound that still made his heart race. I regret that I can't kiss you without you having to bend down, he said, growing serious. I regret that some people will always see us as an oddity. But I will never regret loving you. She knelt beside him, bringing their faces level as she had that first night. I used to think I was too big for this universe, she whispered. Too strong, too fierce, too much. But you showed me that there's room for everyone in love. Even 12-foot warrior aliens with a soft spot for human tea. Especially them, she smiled, and kissed him under the stars. As they held each other, two beings from different worlds who had found their perfect match, the universe seemed full of infinite possibilities. Their love had already changed the course of history, brought peace to warring civilizations, and proven that the greatest strength of all was the courage to be vulnerable. In the end, they had both found what they were looking for, not conquest or glory, but simply someone who saw them truly and loved them completely. And in a galaxy full of wonders, that was the most miraculous thing of all.